Hello everyone, and welcome back to Whispers of Turkish Stars. I hope your day is gentle and kind, because what we're about to share will stir all the quiet corners of your heart. Today, we follow a love that refuses to be boxed in by circumstance, a love that climbs over gates meant to keep it out and walks straight into the light. It's a story people will argue about over coffee and whisper about in comment sections late at night, because it sounds like a dream and yet it feels so true. It belongs to two artists who live under bright lights and louder expectations, and somehow still found a way to hear each other's softest voice. This is Mert Ramazan Demir and Afra Sarıkoglu, and this is the kind of love that dismantles walls the way dawn breaks a dark horizon, slowly at first, and then all at once. Think about how their lives were already defined by scripts and schedules. For years, both walked parallel hallways, same studios, neighboring sets, overlapping press cycles. Yet with lives that seemed to run like separate train tracks, close enough to feel the vibration but never quite touching. Afra, polished from the outside and private at the core, carries the kind of self-possession that only comes from lessons learned too early. She knows how to smile for a camera while guarding a soul that has weathered the wind. Mert, a quiet force with restless curiosity, learned long ago that charm only opens the door, it's grit that keeps you standing once you're inside. Fame didn't grant them immunity from life's quieter bruises. If anything, the spotlight traced those bruises in silver. So how do two people like that meet? Not at a gala, not under fireworks, but in a moment disguised as ordinary. A rehearsal that ran too late. A scene they couldn't quite land. A break that stretched into conversation, the kind that starts with the work and slips into everything else. The crew kept moving around them, adjusting lights, shuffling props, and yet a quiet formed. Just enough to notice the cadence in each other's voice, the subtle way one listened when the other spoke. No grand declaration, no swelling soundtrack. Just a moment that felt different, important without trying to be. What followed wasn't a straight line. Love rarely is. It was a series of choices in small rooms in crowded places. It was recognizing the little shields they each wore and choosing to set them down, piece by piece. Afra had learned to be careful with her truths, to give people what they needed for a story without handing them the parts that still trembled. Mert had his own secret terrain expectations that weighed like wet fabric, a fear of being loved for the silhouette on the poster instead of the person who tosses and turns when the city won't sleep. They both knew walls too well. And yet, with each conversation, they started seeing hairline cracks. They pressed their palms to those places and felt the warmth of something on the other side. Let's name the obstacles, because pretending they weren't there would be unfair to the courage it took to face them. Emotional walls, the kind built from older hurts that whisper don't trust too quickly. Social walls, layered in status and circles and how the industry likes to keep people in tidy categories. Economic walls, not the absence of money but the machinery of endorsement deals and contracts that quietly dictate where you can be and who you should be seen with. Prejudices that come from the outside, opinions launched like darts from strangers who think they know you because they know your character's lines. And the heaviest wall of all, fear. Fear of losing control of your narrative. Fear of handing someone the map to your unguarded places. In the beginning, they didn't try to blow those walls down. They simply started talking across them. He asked the kind of questions that don't demand answers, she offered answers that didn't pretend to be perfect. She told him about the pressure of being watched even when you're just buying bread, about the strange loneliness of being recognized by everyone and known by almost no one. He told her about the cost of always being agreeable, how it blurs the edges of who you really are. And together they formed a pact made of eye contact and soft pauses, nothing performative, everything real. Communication became their quiet superpower. Not the kind of talk that fills a room just to avoid silence, but the kind that opens a door and waits. He learned to listen without racing to fix. She learned to reveal without apologizing for needing more. There were days when schedules stole their afternoons and nights when the city roared and would not let them rest, yet they carved out a small sanctuary, a car ride with the windows cracked, a call between takes, a shared tea liberated from the craft table as the set went dark. Those were the places where the bond thickened, where love became a verb and not just a feeling. They also chose to be the kind of partners who add oxygen to each other's fire. Afra, ever disciplined, sometimes placed her own dream on the shelf for later. Mert, with that gentle insistence that feels like a hand on your back, urged her to take it down and dust it off. Try it, he'd say without saying, I'll be here whether you succeed or stumble. And when his confidence shook, because even admired men have shadowed corners, she was an anchor, meeting his doubt with a memory of everything he had already climbed. They didn't just believe in each other, they invested. Hours of running lines. The grace of saying, go after that role, I'll hold the rest while you chase it. The practical kindness of food sent to a set when the day ran long and the city felt unforgiving. Of course, there were rough edges. Two strong people make sparks as often as light. Small disagreements grew teeth on nights when both were exhausted. A misunderstood text here, a protective silence there. The cameras thought they saw everything, but the cameras didn't see the quiet reconciliations, the walk around the block until the blame burned off, the apology spoken without theatrics, the way one would reach for the other's hand during a silence and find it waiting. Over time, they learned to translate each other's moods, to read the map of sighs and silences and not make monsters out of them. Where others saw chasms, they built bridges plank by plank. People around them needed time. Friends who were protective, family who measured smiles for sincerity, managers who spoke in logistics and PR contingencies. It's natural. Those who love you try to guard you against pain. But transformation wins over suspicion when it's consistent. Their circles watched the way each became a clearer version of themselves with the other near. Afra laughed more with her eyes. Mert's shoulders lost a few degrees of tension. They didn't shrink each other to fit, they expanded each other to belong. And slowly, the skepticism softened into respect, even admiration. What can we learn from the way they handled it? First, empathy is not an accessory, it's architecture. They practice stepping into each other's weather, bringing an umbrella instead of an opinion. Second, vulnerability is not a weakness you hide, it's the doorway through which intimacy enters. They learned to share the truths that felt risky and survived the sharing. Third, patience is a discipline. Love is not a sprint. It's a rhythm. They gave their story time to breathe, to wobble, to find its footing. And fourth, support is an action, not a caption. It's the ride to an early call, the meal delivered to a lockdown set, the quiet insistence that says I'm with you, not just when it looks good, but when it's inconvenient. There were defining moments, nights when noise rose like a tide and rumors knocked at the door with shoes on. A screen grab twisted into a headline. A private dinner made public by a shaky video captured across the street. The internet did what it does, speculated, celebrated, criticized. They could have retreated behind crafted statements, and sometimes they did stay silent because not all truth needs an audience. But within the privacy of their shared world, they refused to let outside narratives reorganize their insides. The measure of their connection was never the applause or the disapproval. It was the way their eyes found each other across a room crowded with opinions. There was a quieter moment too, one without the flash of lenses. A day off that felt stolen, the city unusually soft, the Bosphorus exhaling in long, lazy breaths. They walked without destination, just two people borrowing the afternoon. No stylists, no press calls, no clock pressing a thumb into their backs. They spoke about nothing and everything. Dreams that don't fit on a press release. Futures that don't need an audience to be real. Before they parted that night, there was a simplicity in the air, as if the universe had wiped away chalk marks on a board to make space for a new equation. That's the thing about love built carefully, it starts to feel inevitable. If this sounds like a fairy tale, it's because any love that survives real-life pressure carries a little magic. But it isn't a magic trick. It's work that doesn't feel like labor because it's fueled by choice. They chose each other, again and again, when it would have been simpler to let the schedules and the noise take over. They chose to ask another question instead of preparing a defense. They chose to be each other's soft place in a world that insists on hard edges. Look closely and you'll see the lessons stitched between the scenes. Love can transform people without erasing them. Connection can be both sanctuary and springboard. Admiration is not a pedestal. It's a mirror that shows you what you can be on your best day. When Afra looks at Mert, she sees a man who holds optimism like a lantern, who can find the single clear star in a clouded sky. When Mert looks at Afra, he sees a woman who does not bow to pressure, who turns every detour into a new path. That mutual recognition fuels them. It is not idealization, it is respect in its purest clothes. So here we are, returning to the idea of walls. They still exist. Life in the public eye will always build a new one, just as you take a sledgehammer to the old. But they no longer feel impossible. That is what love does when it's handled with care. It gives you the courage to face the next obstacle because you remember the sound the last wall made when it fell. You remember the dust in the sunlight and the way you both laughed when the view opened up. Thank you for coming on this journey with us today and letting this story settle where it needs to inside you. If you've ever felt your own walls press in, perhaps Mert and Afra's patience and persistence offer a way through. Tell us what part of their path speaks to you the loudest. Was it the soft conversations between takes? Was it the decision to keep their center steady when the outside world spun? Share your reflections below. Your stories make this space richer and more human. And if you felt a spark of hope or recognition while listening, tap that like button, pass this along to someone who could use the reminder, and stay with Whispers of Turkish Stars by subscribing and turning on notifications. We'll be here with more tales of resilience and heart, ready whenever you are. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and let love do what it does best, light the way.